Good evening, council, members of the public and staff. May I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order, please? Councillors Garwood and Fisher, that the special meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater of May 10th, 2023 come to order at 5 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Councillor, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? And seeing none, I will move on to item 3.1. May I have a mover and seconder to get this on the floor? It's to approve the report regarding the 2022-42 PW award for the design build of the new Springwater Fire Station. May I have a mover? Councillors Moore and Deputy Mayor Cabral. That the report from the General Manager of Infrastructure and Operations award design build of the new Springwater Fire Station at 1132 Snow Valley Road, RFP 2022-42 PW dated May 10th, 2023 be received, and that council approved the award and design build of the new fire station at 1132 Snow Valley Road, RFP 2022-42 PW to Birkin Construction for $7,649,852 plus HST, or $7,784,849 with HST recoveries. That council approve and retain the project architect of Marcy O Incorporated for phase 2 of the RFP of 2021-23 FES in the amount of $444,740 plus HST, or $452,567 with HST recoveries. And that council, in addition of $730,065 to the project budget 2014-01, increasing overall funding to $8,580,065 from $7,850,000, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the agreement with Birkin Construction and Masri O Architects. Councillor, are there any questions or discussion on this motion? Councillor Fisher?
I don't think the increase was very drastic, but could somebody let us know exactly why it increased, even though it was a small amount?
I'll turn to GM Ramdeo.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Fisher. Likely the increase that we're seeing, there was not an increase in scope. The scope is exactly the same. So likely the increase that you are seeing is due to inflation, CPI.
Council, are there any other comments or questions? And seeing none, all those in favor? And that has been approved unanimously. Thank you. Fantastic. I'll move on to 4.1, our Community Hub Master Plan. I will now call upon Weston Consulting to present the Community Hub Master Plan. Oh, and GM Ramdale.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Hello again to all of Council, Deputy Mayor Cabral. I just give you an introduction to the presentation and then I'll hand over to Weston. Today's presentation really represents a mini milestone towards the community hub. The township, and our thought is that this becomes the township's focal point. It also took quite a few persons, quite a few engagement sessions to get to where we are today. I'd like to thank the 600 plus residents, the many stakeholders, the groups, our steering committee, and yourselves, members of council, for taking the time to help us in this process. Our residents told us that they wanted a place that connects the community, a place that they can feel comfortable, a place where they experience the seasons, and where they can access our services, where they can play, and where they can relax. In this draft master plan, you'll see symbolism. You'll see a three-way infinity sign. Symbolism in that the never-ending continuity of an infinity sign. The buildings themselves are arranged in that three-way sign. To us, that arrangement is unique. It represents uniqueness. It represents connectedness. and it also represents the eternal nature of our community. There's no beginning, there's no end to our community. Some might also see a clover leaf in the design when you see it. The three connected buildings also have a practical purpose. If for some reason we are unable to implement it as a whole project all at once, it allows natural phasing to construction. So that's the benefit as well. Today's presentation will be by Anna, Vivian, and Shane from Weston Consultants. They would explain what we did to get to today. They would explain the three buildings, the areas to meet and learn, the areas to nourish and engage, and the areas to interact and play. The interact and play option building has 5 options. I ask that you take a look at that, please. Our hope is that council will discuss those options. I will provide guidance as to which one you think we should move forward with. The next steps will be for Weston to take that direction, take the comments, and move in, take the design forward in that direction. There'll be more detailing to the buildings. There'll be more setting out more of the concepts in writing, more engineering, basic engineering that will be done, and costing to finalize a master plan. With that document, if we decide to go for funding for elsewhere, we've got all the information that we would need to go after funding. And that's the idea. When we get to implementation, there'll be an architectural firm, presumably retained to finish the architecture, to finish the engineering for us so we can get to construction. So those will be the next phases. Before I hand over to Weston, I just want to say again, my hope is that you will take a look at what's presented. You will give us your comments. You'll tell us about what the changes you would wish, what you wish different, what we might have missed that we should be including. Tell us what that is. We will include those. That's the hope. So now I'll hand over to Weston, to Shane, to Anna, and to Vivian to begin the presentation.
Thank you and welcome.
No, thank you very much. We're very honored to be here to speak to council, and we've obviously been working on this project for 14, 15 months, and it's a real gem, obviously, in the core of Springwater. So I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Shane Morgan. I'm the design director at Weston Consulting. So I'm joined here as well by Vivian Gomez, who's the senior urban designer and the co-lead of this kind of creative process. Anna Levitska as well, who's an urban designer on our team and a co-author of this document that you're going to be going through. I just wanted to say thank you to the project team at the outset as well. I see Jeff Schmidt, the CAO, and Mahesh as well has been a real guiding force in understanding this process with all of you. And then the steering committee as well has provided fundamental input to shaping this document, and obviously the rest of the project team at Tatham and Azure as well, and 88 cities. So we are honored to be here, as I said, and we're really looking forward to getting your feedback and really hearing what your key concerns are and the items to celebrate, and to shape this into a final package that, as Mahesh mentioned as well, can really become the focal point of the community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anna.
Great. Thanks, Mahesh. Thanks, Shane, for the introduction, and Mayor Coughlin and Council for being here tonight to hear our presentation for the Community Hub Master Plan. So before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the land on which we reside and recognize the ongoing presence of First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people on the land. We want to recognize the deep connection that Indigenous people have with the land and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. So we want to work overall to build more inclusive and respectful communities. I just wanted to kind of, introduce the overall kind of outline of the presentation today. So you can see on the screen, there's 5 key sections that we'll be walking through today. I'll be going through sections 1 to 3 and then passing it over along to Vivian to kind of take you through the concept designs. So we'll just start off with a brief introduction about our team with the project scope, provide a little bit of context onto the area, and then review the project timeline so far, and then jump into the consultation. I just wanted to provide a brief overview of the work done to date by 880 cities, outlining the key themes and how that kind of fed into our overall design process. And that being leading us into section 3, which is our design visioning, our draft vision for the site, and then kind of talking a little bit about the bubble diagram and then the experience zones that we're proposing on site. Then, like I mentioned, Vivian will take over to talk about the actual 5 concepts that are proposed and then conclude with an overview of costing. Great. So who we are, this is kind of just an overview of the main project team members. So as Shane mentioned, Vivian and myself are urban designers and Western Consulting, and our role during this project was really to be facilitators. So kind of working alongside the steering committee members, the town public, local organizations, and key stakeholders to kind of develop a collaborative approach to ensure the final design represents kind of the wants and the needs of the community. So you can kind of see the members of the steering committee here. And then on the following page, some additional community stakeholders that were consulted. So we really have a broad range. So anyone from town staff to recreational committees and First Nation organizations. I'm not going to go through all of these, but they're there and you can look at the presentation afterwards if necessary. Great. So the project scope. So the Community Hub Master Plan is just the overall kind of goal of the project. So what that really means, community being a sense of fellowship with others, a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. The hub kind of meaning an effective center for a place of activity or the center of a region. And then the master plan being kind of a guide to design and help communities create a vision of what they want to look like in the future. So this entire process this entire master plan is the outcome of 2 processes, one being consultation, the other being design. So for consultation, that means the process that involves the public in providing their views and feedback on the proposal to kind of guide that decision making. And then the design is the plan prepared to illustrate the potential layout of our site. So for the consultation portion, that was kind of taken care of by 880 Cities initially in the first phase of the project last year. And then the design is kind of Weston stepping in and kind of taking all those ideas and kind of translating it to a master plan layout, which we're here to discuss today. Right, so this is just a context map of the site. So for those of you who aren't aware, the site is at 1132 Snow Valley. So that's just on the northeast corner of Snow Valley, or northwest corner of Snow Valley and Bayfield. And on this map, we delineated a 1 and 2 kilometer radius just to kind of outline major facilities within the area. So we can kind of see up Bayfield Street, there's a number of commercial opportunities, existing transit that runs alongside the site. There's a number of broader recreational amenities in the areas of the YMCA. There's Simcoe County Museum towards the north of the site, and then as well a number of recreational trails that are present within the north and northwest of the site. It is also worthy to mention that the site is located about a 15-minute drive north of downtown Barrie, so it is kind of a growing corridor. So just to have that in mind. Right, so I think the last part of the introduction is just kind of our timeline so far. So basically, the project timeline has been divided into 3 key phases. Phase 1 beginning last year, running till about beginning of summer. So that was the engagement and research portion. So that was heavily led by 880 Cities with their pop-up events and focus groups, kind of gathering all the feedback from the community and the key stakeholders that I mentioned earlier on. The second process was this phase 2, the design process. So it's kind of late, I guess, end of summer to late fall last year. And that was kind of taking all those ideas and synthesizing it. We carried out a charrette exercise and just kind of coming out with a preliminary design strategy for the site. And that was developing our draft master plan. So since that point, we've kind of moved on to phase 3, which is the refinements. So kind of working with the steering committee, working with town staff to take that initial master plan and kind of, refine it, work through it, see what works and what doesn't. And then since then, we've kind of explored an additional 4 options, which Vivian will be discussing later on. So we are here and then hoping to kind of get your feedback today on the 4 or 5 options. And then the ultimate preferred option will be explored in a final summarized report to council. Okay, so moving on to kind of the second part of the presentation, just a quick summary of the consultation. So in the initial outreach that was conducted, we had 601 survey respondents, over 35 organizations consulted, which resulted in 7 key themes that kind of led or influenced the master plan design. One of the top, I guess, main stats to kind of consider are the public's kind of need or desire for access to recreation, access to nature, and access to year-round programming, which you can see highlighted here. Okay, so our key themes. So these were, again, the results of the outcomes of the present consultation. So I won't go into too much depth, but overall, these were the 7. So first being co-locating, collaborating. Second is multi-generational, intergenerational, and prioritizing accessibility. Third is culturally diverse and celebratory spaces. 4 is expanding the role of the library. I know the library is located across Bayfield now, and with the plan to move it onto the site in the future. So that was a big key theme, kind of expanding what that means for the community. 5 being filling the gaps of sporting opportunities. 6 is safety, access, and a multitude of physical connections. And then 7 is embracing the feeling of spring water as it grows. So understanding that the township is growing in the future and kind of creating a hub, a central hub for residents and visitors to enjoy in the future is a guiding principle. Okay, so all of that being said, the third section of the presentation is kind of like the ideation. So developing that draft master plan vision. So with all of the consultation that we did today and kind of the development of the initial draft master plan, the kind of vision that we landed on so far for the site is a social gathering space that will provide recreational and leisure services for residents and visitors. Drawing from the symbolism and Indigenous use of the land, the hub will exhibit design excellence through its use of organic forms and natural materials to create a space for creativity and resilience. It will encourage partnerships with local organizations, businesses, and individuals to foster a sense of community ownership and involvement. And the hub will be a space for community-led initiatives, events, and activities that will promote social cohesion and collective well-being. So that is a mouthful, but that is kind of the broader vision for the site. And kind of just walking through kind of the vision diagram, this was the initial brainstorming that led to the draft master plan design. So as Mahesh mentioned earlier, the Métis kind of infinity symbol, or a clover, some might view it as, are just kind of located here centrally. So those are kind of we define them as experience zones. So creating clusters of activities and programming next to one another within the site that would have similar uses. As you can see, one would be focused on meet and learn, so where the library would be located, nurture and engage, and then interact and play, where we would have more of the sporting facilities. And these would connect to a central kind of core focal point within the site, and then also create kind of a linkage to a gateway at the southeast corner of the site. And all of this, you can see we aim to kind of create those trail connections and improve permeability within the site. We really want to build on the existing trails networks that are located to the north, and then the access to the Simcoe County Museum. So you can see here, there's a number of precedent images that kind of we initially looked at when we were developing the site. So I will be passing it over to Vivian now for the next stage, or the next few sections of the presentation.
Thank you, Anna. Good afternoon, Mayor Coughlin and members of the council and the public. So as Anna mentioned, from now on, we are going to delve into the design principles that led us to these 3 zones of experiences and 3 main buildings with different programming, following what we heard from community members and key stakeholders in this process. So next slide, please. So in the 5 options that we are going to see from now, there are design principles that led us to design decisions and a building location and a site circulation. So as you see, listening from the community, talking about the connection with nature, connection between like community members that would foster a sense of community and belonging. There was also a very explicit need and desire to keep the ambience the environment as is in terms of like building from the pathways that exist already there and the trails that connect through the site and to the site. So based on that, we had this idea of one of the core principles being enhanced connectivity. There is a connection between the site and surroundings already there. And from that connection, we created these flow of movement as it came from the consultation, one of the principles of co-locating and collaborating, exploring movement and permeability between spaces. We have these 3 separate zones, as we mentioned before. As you see here, the proposed 3 buildings. Building A would be the interact and play experience zone. Building B would be the meet and learn, where we would locate the library and supporting uses for the library, supporting uses that would foster that experience of like meeting and learning together as a community. And building C, the experience of nourish and engage. That would be the community hub itself. We are going to delve into the uses of that, but there we envision the community garden that a lot of community members have expressed the desire to have community garden. And as you see, it's all connected. We did some research in indigenous architecture too, and the way that we can foster a more like holistic integration of spaces. And this is what we came with. These like these flux and this movement between spaces surrounding the area and spaces within the area. All to say that this is a space where we envision with the community to be a pathway, a walk through the site and walk to these different uses, feeling and sensing that you are in one space, like a unit, but at the same time having uses and programming separated and integrated. So as you see, we have building experiences connected at grade, uninterruptedly, and then connected by a suspended and closed mezzanine that would bring this sense of unity between the 3 buildings. Next slide, please. So building A, we have 5 options for building A. This is the interact and play experience. So as you can see, there is an outdoor programming that's flexible and can be also like tailored according to the community needs in the next phases of the project. But we envision bringing from community feedback an outdoor gym, tennis courts, pickleballs. We would have also multi-use and intergenerational area. And in all of these zones, we would have a mix between like hard and soft landscaping surrounding the buildings and integrating these zones to the natural forested area that we already have there. The transitional spaces between the indoors and outdoors, we would have those terraces that can be used as a cafe, as a bar patio, and also a covered area somewhere that people can look and experience the outdoors, but with the feeling of enclosure and protection from the weather. We would also, so internally, we included the fitness area that would be 500 square meters dedicated to a fitness center for the use of the community. And then there is a space for a lounge area in the mezzanine. A lounge area can be seen as spaces like to sit and gather or read a book. It's basically a community living room. We also consider having like a dining or a chain restaurant, like spaces to eat. It's important to say that in all buildings, as best practice, we included spaces to sit, spaces to eat, and spaces to gather. So we also consider a lot of community members' desire to have like small shops, and we included the small shops and in this building particularly, a kiosk or space for rentals. Even like toys that kids, like parents can rental for kids to play outside. That would be one of the principles included in this alternative. Just to highlight this alternative of building A, one is does not consider either an ice rink or an aquatic center. And on the bottom, you can see precedents and examples kind of like a look like that can be, but again, as this is a master plan and this is just the framework where the project will evolve, these can change. Next slide, please. So the second option, an alternative for building A, remember this is interact and play experience. These alternatives consider including a single arena, like a single pad arena. That would be, we estimate 1,750 square meters for it. We will also include washrooms, showers, and lockers facilities. And as we have in the first option, space for like rentals, small shops, dining, and also the lounge area in the mezzanine that can be a space for like parents to gather while the kids are playing hockey. And the idea is that this is integrated space, so transparency and visibility from different areas of the building, that's encouraged. Next slide, please. So the third alternative for building A, it includes double pad arena. That would take 3,300 square meters. And as we increase the programming and the use of the building, facilities such as washrooms, dining, lounge area, and reception, that would increase as well to be aligned with the demand and the new capacity of the building. So we have here 10,750 square meters. This is the gross construction area, which will discount around 5% of space that would be dedicated for circulation and some other elements of the buildings that it's structural. And again, like it's the idea is to have these transitional space between the building and the outdoors. As you see the roof line dashed, you will have like some sort of like terrace between the building and the outdoor amenity areas. Next slide, Anna, please. So this is the fourth alternative that, different from the other ones, includes an aquatic center. So this alternative is a single pad arena that would take around like 2,000 square meters, and an aquatic center that integrates like 1,300 square meters. So we have an increment of total GCA here, now 11,650 square meters. And as I mentioned before, as the building area increases, some of the facilities are going to increase as well to respond to the new capacity of the building. As you may notice, the outdoor programming, we try to keep the same between all these building A alternatives. The elements that's changing, as you see, is the additional arena or arena aquatics combination, as you just saw in the other three options. So the final option for building A would be a double pad arena and an aquatic center. So we will get to a total GCA of 12,700 square meters to accommodate, again, like the two, like the double pad arena, the aquatic center, and then the increased facilities that have to follow the increase of building capacity. And we'll move to building B now. So building B is that space, as we mentioned, like the meet and learn. And we also believe that having a play element there, the natural playground, we heard a lot of community members expressing the needs of more natural spaces to play, water feature that can be a splash pad or a pond, even with a flexible use that can be adapted to winter time. But that's all because we believe that play is also a tool to learn, and arts and culture, as is stated on the key themes, like a culturally diverse and celebratory spaces. We envision this outdoor amphitheater that can be versatile and adapted to the year-round activities. But again, like having the communication between spaces and nature in a very permeable and connected way. So some of the precedents at the bottom, you can see the multifunctionality, adaptability, and also the creative use of spaces that should be shaped by the community. Next slide, please. And a building C, as I mentioned, this is the Nourish and Engage. So we included the community garden and the eco hub, where education about the environment or about nurturing the earth and this connection with the natural environment would happen there. There was also the need to have these like community learning and multi-purpose spaces where studios or classes can be fostered there. Also like the intergenerational activities between seniors and youth to like have one or another teaching each other on their skills. Offices, we included 930 square meters for office and a daycare with washrooms that would serve these facilities as well. We would have some of the offices on the ground level and some of them on the mezzanine. This all is a note to all these like elements that and the way that we are organizing, layouting the building interiors. This is just to help you visualize the potential for building spatial organization, but it's not fixed. This is again a master plan level exercise, and it's to help you envision how we can use these spaces, but not fixed yet. So we also have here, as we have in building A and building B, a space for small shops, a lounge area, a community kitchen, and a cafe with dining space as well, either indoors and outdoors. And again, surrounded by this combination of hard and soft landscaping, integrating with the natural tree area that we are going to maintain. So these, like building A, building C and building B, they are about like a 3,500, 4,500. The base option for building A is also around that size, as we try to keep the base a more balanced relationship between building size and programming, as we heard from the community, and also being aware that as much when we increase the area of the building, when we increase the area of these three zones, we also remove more trees. So we try to keep a balanced relationship between building size, natural landscape, and then the hard and soft landscape that would be designed and with a more defined treatment. But the whole idea is that we have these outdoor spaces and indoor spaces connected by this network of pathways. The pathways would be like multi-use, and also the mezzanine that people can move from a building to another indoors. So as Mahesh said, it's the idea of having these three clusters of experiences 3 buildings with different uses, but all integrated and all with the idea of this continuous space as the public, the community, and visitors would experience as they walk through and to these areas. So in the next part of the presentation, the next slide, Anna, you see a very rough, but again, to help you visualize, at this point, we don't have defined materials or a defined structure, but we do have this vision of how the massing is going to be. The envelope of the building would be transparent to allow for this connection between indoors and outdoors, indoors and nature, as many community members have expressed that need. And the suspended, but at the same time that it's enclosed, it allows for permeability. You can have a view of the site and a view of the integration between the 3 buildings from the upper floor. And at the same time, people would keep walking and navigating through those spaces without barriers. The idea here is to connect and remove barriers for movement. So this is very rough, but it gives you an idea of like the 3 massing of buildings connected by one roof and one suspended and closed mezzanine, and the core functions that would be a step back from the envelope that would allow for permeability between indoors and outdoors. So for the final part and closing this presentation, I will invite Shane Morgan for final considerations and a commentary about overall cost assessment. Thank you.
So thank you, Vivian. The baseline project costs that we have outlined here are, they're high level, they're order of magnitude costing on the basis that detailed architectural drawings and high level detailed cost consulting will be required to give a more grounded and true version of what these will. These are based on a series of project comparables and Canadian-wide costs for various regions. So the specifics of each number can fluctuate, but at this point, this gives an order of magnitude costing for us to just understand the potential impacts of that. Obviously, material, structures, sustainable features, all of those things can have a substantial impact on these numbers. But this is just our first port of call at really looking at the variety of building spaces and site servicing works and the general landscaping. So the base plan for building A, which is alternate A1, which does not have the arena and does not have the aquatic center, will be 18.2 million. Building B, which only has the one iteration, is approximately 40, and building C is 38.5. The site servicing work to be approximately 7.5 million, bringing to a total project cost of 104 million, 104.2 million. Next slide, please, Anna. And here are the cost analysis deltas between the various options. So let's see, the alternate of number 1 is the base cost, and then as you can see, as we go through and add a variety of aquatics and or arenas, those costs they grow proportionately. So alternative 2, which has a single pad and no aquatics, the delta is an additional 12.3 million, bringing the project cost to 116.5. The alternate 3, which is a double pad arena with no aquatics, is 132.4 with a delta of 28.2. The single pad arena with aquatics, once again, a delta of 35.9, bringing a total to 140.1. And then the double pad arena and aquatics, as I'm sure you would expect, being the most expensive option with the most facilities, would have a $44 million increase in incremental cost based on that base project cost, bringing the total to 148.2. So based on the options we have outlined today, there's obviously almost a 50-degree cost swing based on the addition of various facilities and features. But obviously looking at that through the umbrella of we have referenced even in the notes for anyone who wants to go back and check as well exactly where we found a lot of this information. Altus Group are a well-respected cost consultant, and their cost guide for a lot of these facilities does even have within that a 30% range for various areas. So there is, some work to hone in, obviously, on the preferred option. We will be going into more detail to really understand the areas and get a more detailed analysis of what that project cost should look like. But that is still going to be subject to any supplemental architectural RFP that you would be putting forward. So then to, next slide, please, on. Yeah, so the final takeaway is obviously just looking at the symbolism and cultural celebration, the holistic approach to design and programming, the community meeting space and opportunity for social interaction, the fluid connectivity within site and surrounding context. Our objective here has always been to marry the variety of inhabitants of Springwater and kind of pull them together in a space that both will feel familiar yet exciting and new, and has a series of options for them regardless of their preference for activity, and then knitting all of that back together with a singular space that allows for that kind of gathering meeting, and then having the various options available to them, all settled and nestled within a natural setting. The trees and the trails and everything in that area has the real opportunity to make this quite special. So they are our final thoughts. So thank you very much once again for your time, and we're open to any questions, and we appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the presentation from Weston Consultant? Councillors Thompson and Moore, that the presentation regarding the Community Hub Master Plan from Weston Consulting be received. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, hang on, wait. Got ahead of myself there. My apologies. I would like to open it up now for questions and comments from members of council. If I can just ask that we do take down the slides that I can see Deputy Cabral again, please. Thank you. Members of council, do we have any questions, comments? Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. If you could just explain the costing to me a little bit more clearly. When I read option 1, it said $18 million. And then this last slide, the 18 million is not there, but the base project cost is $100 million. But option 1 had NA across the screen. I don't have it in front of me, but could you just explain the base cost price then, and plus what that 18 million represents?
Thank you. And 3, if you could pull that back up again. My apologies to Councillor Moore.
Yes, through Mayor Coughlin to Councillor Moore. So the original base project cost that we outlined is essentially what is the cheapest option. So we're looking at that as the baseline. So that includes the alternate 1, which has no arena and no aquatics facility. So the NA is essentially just saying that it's essentially referring back to the previous page of this presentation. So that will be coming in there. So that they are the costs. So the 18.2 baseline for building A is what that building A would cost. And then the supplemental options of 2, 3, 4, and 5 would have an increase in cost. Buildings B and C are static throughout the rest of the costing as well. So you can just see that the increase in costs is just supplemental based on adding arenas and or the aquatics facility. So this baseline of 104 is the total project cost for all buildings and site works at a high level. And then obviously the other options, A2, A3, A4, A5 have a supplemental increase in cost based on those facilities.
And I have Councillors Thompson and Fisher.
Just a couple of questions. The ice pads on A4, is there an estimate of capacity for seating capacity for people watching games? And second question is, if we do have an ice pad, how does that fall into minor hockey zoning? Would Barrie minor hockey have say in usage of that arena? And
I will turn to the consultants for the first question and maybe make comment myself on the second.
So through Mayor Coughlin to Councillor Thompson, the detailed design has not incorporated any specifics for the amount of seating. We'd be looking to you for that level of guidance in any of the arena options, be it single pad or double pad. You know, the details and the amount of seating that you would like to see with that, we can obviously incorporate it into the preferred option. As of now, it's an approximate area for what we think and what we have studied that a general arena size is required.
Thank you. And Councillor Thompson, on your question of the minor hockey lines, I would assume that when we continue to grow as we are, there would be an adjustment done to the lines. But if there's not, many of our residents currently, mostly those in wards 4 and 5, are currently property of Barrie Minor Hockey. There's no option at a rep or other level to play in Elmville at our existing arena. So while the front of their jerseys will say Barrie, they are Springwater residents. So I think that that's important for us to note in that as well. But there was in years previous, when I did sit on the Recreation Advisory Committee, there was a letter of intent or endorsement from the city of Barrie. As we know, they would probably rent whatever we're not using. So that partnership could still be there. And to Councillor Fisher.
Through you, Mayor, to CAO Schmidt, regardless of the choice we go with 1 through 5 or any combination, can you explain to us and the public how this would be funded? And
CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Fisher. Councillor Fisher, the budget, the 10-year capital budget currently does include projects for the library as well as for a multi-use complex. As for the funding, I believe it's a combination of a number of different resource or funding sources, being development charges, reserves, and or debt. But I think our Director of Finance, Director Radigan, could probably confirm that for us this evening.
Thank you. Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to members of council. The project is 61% funded through development charges, which is based on our current development charge study. That figure may change based on our updated development charges study, which is set for expiration at the end of June, I believe. And the remaining funds would be debentured. There is a good possibility that the entire project would be debentured, including the development charges, just because we don't actually have cash in hand in terms of when we speak about development charges. So we would be looking at funding the entire project through debt.
And follow on, Councillor Fisher.
so just to confirm, regardless of the option, whether it's the 104 million or the 150 million, we would be essentially sticking to that 61% DC funded, whether we debt fund it ahead of time. We'd essentially be sticking to those same percentages regardless of which option was we go towards, correct?
Director Radigan.
I apologize, having obviously some computer issues. Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Fisher. That is correct. The entire project is 61% development charge funded.
Thank you. Other questions from members of council? Councillor Garwood.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Potentially, I have a few issues with building A. So I'm looking at that $18.2 million and really, I understand that is the base total there, reflective without any sort of pads or aquatics. But to me, that's not reflective of the 56% of residents who responded who wish for access to recreation. So I don't look at that number as, while sure, it makes the total number of $104.2 million less. It's not the reality of what we're going to be looking at. I'd like to know, has the idea of one building and incorporating many aspects of this plan, while I love the overall plan, the $104 million price tag, in reality more like $150 million price tag is quite extensive, and I'm seeing some head shakes and agreements up here right now. So again, I'm looking at maybe some of our neighbors, how Wasaga Beach has a project currently going on right now. Have we looked at something similar to that where we're incorporating aspects of buildings A through C? And potentially I also see some overlaps with building B and C, and building B and C, that's a total of almost $80 million.
And thank you. Before I do go to other members of council for follow-on, I did see one of the consultants put their hand up there to respond.
Thanks, Mayor Coughlin, through you. I may say one of the things that we discussed with the community, and just to answer to your question, Councillor, about the desire for recreation activities, like the results that we had from the survey, like recreation can be different from for different groups of the community. Recreation can be walking through the site and be in connection with landscape, can be a bench to sit in a quiet space and read a book. So that's what we try to integrate, and also try to incorporate a more like diverse and multifunctional space, as we would like to address more people from the community than be specific to one or two. Thank you.
Okay, I saw Councillor Fisher had his hand.
I just want to say, actually, I agree with the sentiments of Councillor Garwood. When I take a look at this, I'll be honest with you, I was taken aback by the price tag, whether it was option 1 through 5. It's quite a bit of money. And I'm wondering if, although it's very impressive architecturally, we operate in a sub $50 million a year budget. We're looking really at somewhere between, in my eyes, 130 and 150 million, because I do agree option 1 doesn't suit the community. Option 2 starts to. We're looking at over $100 million, and I have to ask, with materials not defined, according to Mrs. Gomez, and the potential for this price tag to go up, just as it did with our fire hall, between adoption and by the time we stick shovels in the ground, I have to ask the same question. Could we potentially put this all under one roof and have the same sort of facility that benefits the community, but drive that price tag down? Thank you.
I'm going to turn to Consultant Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to address both Councillor Garwood and Councillor Fisher. So while the presentation kind of outlines the buildings as individual structures, they are more portions of that building. There is one contiguous roof, and they're connected on the upper level into one space. As part of the preferred option, if you want us to look at that and investigate that, we can try and consolidate to a certain extent. But functionally, the way the design works is essentially in that central courtyard. If you recall from one of the earlier slides, there was a kind of a blue star in the middle. That area is essentially just a pass-through, a walkway that kind of congregates within that, and then you can kind of keep walking through. However, they fundamentally function as a single building. They have different access points. We can look at tightening up some of the programming within to consolidate the potential for slight overlap, and then obviously maybe consolidate, one cafe in the corner of one building that serves that central area instead of duplicating, as looking at cost reduction measures. But functionally speaking, it is one building, and we can kind of tidy up some of the architectural style. But once again, this also goes back to the point that the size of the facilities, be they consolidated or spread out slightly more, there's just the cost per square foot is an existing factor. So the architecture will determine a lot of that. But if you have aquatics facility that's maybe slightly spread out, or one that is more consolidated into what appears to be a centralized facility, there is a similar cost outlay to those.
Thank you. Before I do go to Councilor Moore, Deputy Cabral, did you have your card up earlier? Perfect. Deputy Cabral.
Thank you very much, Mayor Coughlin, and thanks for the presentation. The price tag is astronomical, in my opinion. Whether it's DC funded or not, we don't know where the DCs are coming from. To be quite honest, it's not a vision that I would have even anticipated. It's great to want to pay homage to this, that, and the other thing, but these are recreational facilities. They should be purpose built. There's been a number of new facilities built in the last handful of years, maybe 10 or so. I could look to Innisfil. They have a fabulous facility down there, purpose built. It looks nice. It accommodates all of their needs. I'm sorry, folks, but this here might be something that would be appropriate for a large urban city with a lot of dollars and maybe a statement to make as far as architecture is concerned. But I think for Springwater Township, as Councillor Fisher has pointed out, our budget's 50 million, less than 50 million a year. And yes, we are anticipating growth, but I really think we have to provide the recreational facilities as the primary function. And I think the building should be purpose-built in an economical fashion that best meets the needs of the community, but also is respective of the taxpayers that will be paying for it. Because when we're using DC dollars, they're still coming from taxpayers. They're just coming to us in a slightly different fashion. And those DC dollars quite often can be targeted for other purposes. So I think I'd be remiss not to say, and I do apologize, but this is not what I envisioned. Even the preliminary ones, and I'm going to ask CAO Schmidt, I think there was some odd numbers tossed around at that time when we just had some drawings that were prepared by staff. I'd like, through Mayor Coughlin, maybe if CAO Schmidt can just reflect back on that and provide members of council some idea of where we were just a scant 3 years ago or 2 years ago when we were kind of looking at some proposals.
CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. My apologies, Deputy Mayor Cabral. I honestly don't believe township staff have brought forward any proposals in the last 2 or 3 years as it relates to the rec complex. So my apologies if I missed something, but I don't believe that we have provided any detailed or any type of costing. I think what we've done is we went through the process of acquiring the land as we have, and essentially with the intention of building a multi-purpose complex. But to my knowledge, I don't believe we've ever prepared any kind of costings for council to my knowledge.
Follow on, Mayor Coughlin.
Follow on.
And I do apologize to CAO Schmidt. I think it was probably part and parcel to when we were looking at the initial plans for the site. They weren't really plans or proposals, just, I believe, staff drawings at the time. But I think there was some idea of what we anticipated these costs to be. And I'll be honest with you, this number scares me a lot. I don't think, I think one building would suit our purposes with the ability to add on to that singular building. And I think there's opportunity here. Even if I look to Wasaga Beach, they're building a brand new facility there, and it looks like it's going to be very attractive, but it still is a functional building that, I mean, with all the glass and the curves, I think that just adds to the costs, folks. So, I mean, that's my comments on this. And I do apologize to the folks who are making the presentation, but my vision and your vision really don't meet, and I apologize.
Thank you. And before I do turn to Councillor Fisher, I will elaborate on the sentiment of council. I think that there is an opportunity for us to highlight maybe not a timber roof, maybe a timber accent. I think that there's opportunity for us to tie our heritage into a building and create a spectacular, beautiful building, much like the fire hall that we're very excited to finally put some shovels in the ground over. And I think that there is opportunity. While I do understand that it is one building, I think that there could be some cost savings if that one building was together. And I did look at it with the duplication of amenities and having food over here and food over here. And to me, the whole point of food is to bring people together and have people in one area. So if there's an opportunity to have less of the duplication for the areas, I think moving, and I'm not, if we want to continue the conversation, I think in order to provide direction to the consultants to come back with something that might be a little more palatable in the financial area, I think it's important for this council to provide direction as to the amenities, whether it's 2 ice pads, 1 ice pad, and aquatics. I think that is something that is incredibly important for us to get firm numbers on coming back. I know myself, I think that operationally, 2 ice pads make sense. We're already busting at the seams. We're already past we're supposed to have 2 pads according to our recreation master plan, and we have a lot of new residents coming to utilize that. So I myself would like to see 2 ice pads moving forward, and aquatics, they can definitely open up to the table, whether that is something we incorporate now, understanding that we have heard loud from our residents that they do want it, or if that's something that we want to put in as a phased in for a next approach. So I will open that up to council if there's any comments on that when we move forward, and Councillor Fisher and then more.
I agree. I think 2 ice pads is must. I think we definitely were a hockey area. I personally think the ongoing costs and liabilities that may come with aquatics are something we don't want to look at least in this phase. I see that as, you can even see some municipalities are actually shutting them down. So I think we maybe want to stay away from that. Architecturally, what we were shown was stunning, but I definitely think something more modest that brings in line our budget would be a lot smarter, but certainly 2 ice rinks. Also too, I've noticed throughout each option, there was eating areas, but it said chain restaurant. I think we need to think, are we really going to have a chain restaurant? Would we have the volume of people going through it to support a chain restaurant? I think that's something to maybe not have. Anyway.
And Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I agree that the plan is lovely. It's beautiful, but it's too extravagant. And so, but my vision really is the 2 ice pads with the possibility of a phased in aquatics. So I don't know if we could do that down the road is what I'm thinking. I do like the idea of having storefront availability along Bayfield Street. I think it's a really good opportunity to create an income flow if possible, and bring people to the rec center too for more than just the ice pads. So I would like to see maybe a little more of that incorporated. I want to see too, I like the childcare idea. I think we do need childcare, especially with so many residents. So I need to keep that if we could, hopefully. And meeting rooms, people that can rent community rooms and possibly gather to celebrate birthdays and anniversaries too. But that too creates some income stream. So those opportunities I'd like to see explored more.
And thank you. And on that too, I agree. I think that a commercial or chain restaurant in that some of my favorite pads across Ontario have that available to residents. And maybe we don't need to be like the one that has the wingding where you can actually have your licensed dressing rooms, but maybe one day I think that having that available, it might actually just bring people in. They might just want to go for a quick dinner and catch a game, whether they have grandchildren or not, or whether they're looking for an evening. I think that helps bring people into the community. And I know myself, if I can grab something to go on the way home, I would be happy to do that. So to see that option remain is something I would definitely support. But also on the shared space and the communal spaces, we've heard from our Springwater Sports Heritage, we've heard from our Federation of Agriculture, we've heard that there's a great opportunity to showcase. And I'll be quite honest with you, I literally have been waking up dreaming about this for 5 years, to the point where I have the plaids named Floss and Vespera in my head with like heritage on the outside of it. So I think that there is opportunity for us to have those accents and those highlights that show our community that this isn't just bricks and mortar. This is a feeling, because Springwater, we all talk about it. We want as many trees to remain on that property. We want it to feel different than other places. And while the rendering did feel different than a lot of things I've seen, I don't think that by coming back with a more together to keep those highlighted areas. And on Councillor Moore's part about the potential daycare, the potential to have a YMCA or a partnership to brought in to host that or to take on some of our operational costs, that I think is, I've heard multiple times from our residents. So I did see Deputy Cabral had his card up, and I think that's where I was at. Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I would actually ask that the consultants possibly reach out to that new facility in Wasaga Beach and have a look at it, and reach out to the one in Innisfil and have a look at it too. In my opinion, they're both very functional, good-looking buildings. The one in Wasaga Beach is not completed yet, but it certainly is taking shape. With respect to chain restaurants, I would certainly support that, but only if they were available outside of arena times or arena use. Like if you're going to have a chain restaurant there, not on the inside, have it so that it can be accessed from the outside, that it might even be able to accommodate a drive-through, that kind of thing. And it might even behoove us at this point in time, if that's what we're looking at doing, to maybe reach out to maybe an opportunity to partner with a chain restaurant that wants to put some money into it as well. And I would also suggest that if we're going to be looking at daycare, that if there's a daycare outfit out there that is a for-profit per se, that they might also want to participate and help offset some of these costs. So if we're going to think about doing some of these things, we should also look at ways to try and, let's say, pry a few dollars from some of the people that are going to be benefiting from it down the road in the operational side.
And I do have Councillor Garwood and then Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And I think my statements are going to echo the rest of council's. First of all, I wanted to thank the consultants. I did just jump in there and start providing my feedback. So thank you for providing this presentation. Well, I think it's absolutely stunning. I think, as Councillor Moore had mentioned, I really don't think it's a reality for Springwater at this time. Again, I don't love the word modest, but maybe that's what we should be looking more towards, is modesty when it comes to this project. I also think about what I hear from residents in the northern part of the municipality who are very excited for this project and see how it's a benefit for all members of Springwater, but also saying, do we need to spend $150 million? Should we be investing in other areas of recreation throughout the entire municipality instead of $150 million in one spot? So again, I'd like to see two pads. I think I'm in agreement with the rest of council on that, and definitely the option for a pool down the road. I don't think that it's necessarily a requirement today, but I would definitely like to see other options under one roof. But thank you again to the consultants for the presentation.
Councillor Fisher.
Through you to Mr. Morgan, what was your, and I assume it's uniform throughout every option, your cost per square foot, or I guess per square meter is how you were doing it? You know, approximately?
Thanks for the question, Mayor Fisher. Through you, Mayor Coughlin, back to Mayor Fisher. I don't believe we actually have that final number. Just give me a moment to check and I can confirm.
Because I would expect it would be uniform throughout each option.
Well, in regards to obviously different facilities, like an arena cost or an aquatics facility would have the highest per square foot cost. If I can refer back even to the cost guide that I mentioned previously.
So
an ice arena in a GTA municipality can be $345 to $435 per square foot. An aquatics facility can be $590 to $915 per square foot. So there's quite an order of magnitude between different facilities. Obviously, a lounge versus an arena versus each thing has a different thing. Obviously, it's an amalgamation. So as building A increases with arenas and aquatics, they are the most expensive things that we can put into it. So that's why I don't believe we have an approximate facility cost as a baseline. It is based on we measured out each kind of use and kind of did it that way. I believe the figures that we used actually is the $550 per square foot for the ice arena based on more recent examples, and then the aquatic facility $1,100. They're, I believe, coming in slightly higher these days. So I do acknowledge obviously that the phasing for an arena might reduce costs considerably in the short term.
Thank you. And I have Deputy Cabral, and then Clerk Ainsworth has drafted some direction for us.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I just was thinking on this. I was curious to know. I would actually like to see some form of a gymnasium or auditorium also included in the plan, and we really didn't see that here. And my reasoning behind that is wintertime rolls around at the south end. We really don't have a facility as we hope to utilize in the north end with EDHS. And it would provide opportunity for volleyball. It would provide opportunity for a number of evening things, daytime things, weekend things, and also provide us with an opportunity to host very large events indoors if need be. So I would like to see something along those lines also be considered moving forward. I think the folks in the south end would benefit from that. I know schools are available, but I think residents utilizing one of their own facilities, if it's going to have, you want 2 hockey pads and we're talking about a swimming pool, I think an auditorium or a gymnasium would certainly provide volleyball, basketball, a lot of other opportunities for our residents as well. So that's my comment with respect to that. I hope it does see its way into the next plan as part and partial to it. And I hope council members might like to speak on that point as well.
Thank you. Are any members of council comment on gymnasium? And I have Councillor Moore, and then I will read Clerk Ainsworth.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I love the idea. It didn't occur to me because that wasn't presented, but I certainly love the idea, and it does provide what the residents asked for, which was year-round programming. And I think that that's super important. We can incorporate, the fitness areas too into the gym. But like you say, it can also bring in large events, and which is great for the local economy. So I'd certainly support that.
Council, I do have a recommendation here before us that reads, and that staff be directed to bring forward an alternative, simplified and purpose-built design, which includes 2 ice pads in phase 1 and an aquatic center as a possible phase 2. And further, that staff and the consultants review lower cost possibilities, including other listed features within the facility, including a gymnasium component. I have Deputy Cabral, and then I also have comment.
Thank you, Mayor Collin. I would like to add that the gymnasium also be included. I mean, I like hockey, but it's not everybody's cup of tea. And 1 pad in a gymnasium or 1 pad in a pool, I think does satisfy whatever needs we have. But if I'm to support this going forward, I would like to see a gymnasium also added to the double pad. I think we need the winter time indoor capabilities at that location for recreational programming.
Now, thank you, Mayor, or sorry.
I'm asking for an amendment to that motion.
It is actually included in the original motion that I did read. It does actually say gymnasium component at the end of it there. So that's already in what I just read. No, that's not a problem at all. And I do think that there are lots of facilities across Ontario and that do have components of gyms as well, like the suspended tracks and, the workouts over top so you can watch your kid while you work out. Like there's lots of ways to incorporate fitness and open spaces like this. So council, I can read it again, or if there's any, I do see that Consultant Morgan would like to comment.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kaufman, through you to council. So in our Building A iterations, each one does have a 500 square meter fitness facility that would be intended as a gymnasium or something similar. So each one does currently possess that. There are a few of the precedents on, say, page 16 of the presentation that even envisage that idea of that, running track, maybe as part of the mezzanine overlooking one of the arenas, being maybe more the practice arena versus the more, game arena, something like that, just to highlight that as part of the presentation.
That's great. Thank you. I look forward to seeing what this looks like in the next step. So council, I'm just going to read this again, and I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder for the amendment. That staff be directed to bring forward an alternate, simplified and purpose-built design, which includes 2 ice pads in phase 1 and an aquatic center as a possible phase 2. And further, that staff and the consultant review lower cost possibilities, include other listed features within the facility, including a gymnasium component. And if I can have a mover and seconder for that, is Councillor Fisher and Garwood, and all in favor of the amendment. And that has carried. And then the main motion would read the amendment and that the presentation be received. All those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you very much. And I look forward to continuing this process with you. It's very exciting. Council, we are now moving on to 5.1. May I have a mover and seconder for the confirmation bylaw? Councillors Garwood and Moore, that bylaw 2003-049 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at a special meeting held on May 10th, 2023, listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? That is carried. And on to our adjournment. May I have a mover and a seconder to adjourn the meeting, please? Councillors Fisher and Deputy Cabral, that the special meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 6:14 PM to meet again in regular meeting on May 17th, 2023 at 6:30 PM. All those in favor? And that has carried.